And if it is, you've already won 40% of the sale just by being genuine. So rapport isn't manipulation. It really is just understanding their world and showing that you get them, and so that they feel heard before you try to solve their problem.
Welcome to the Master Dealmakers Secrets podcast. And now, here's sales growth strategist, John Blake.
Welcome to Master Dealmakers Secrets. I'm John Blake. This is episode 256, and today we're going to talk about rapport. So rapport influences 40% of a buyer's decision, not your product features, not your pricing, not your company or your company's reputation. It's rapport. And this is evidenced in a question that I often ask groups that I'm working with and clients, where I say, I get show of hands, who in here has ever not bought from someone because they either rubbed you up the wrong way or they were rude? And everyone has had that situation. So rapport is important. It's not everything, but it's 40%. So if you can't build connection in the first 5 minutes of a sales call, you're already losing half the battle before you even start talking about solutions. So let me show you how to build rapport without being fake, without small talk that wastes time, and without feeling like you're manipulating people. So if you've ever been on a sales call where the prospects seem guarded or skeptical, you can feel the resistance before you even start. They're giving one-word answers. The conversation feels transactional, not collaborative. You've skipped rapport or you've built it wrong. Most salespeople either jump straight into questions, which feels integrative, or they waste 15 minutes on weather and sport, which feels forced, and neither works. So here's what most sales training gets wrong about rapport. They think that it's small talk. And these days, most people they're quite sales savvy. And what I mean by that is that they understand enough about how most salespeople operated. And so what I mean by that is that if you just start asking somebody about something that you can see that they're interested in, or you start talking about really general things like the weather or something that has no real connection, it will sound contrived. And so what you want to do is you want to find something that you have in common. You want to find a point in that you can connect on. And so the first mistake that salespeople make is that they think that rapport is small talk for the reasons that I've just given. The second one is skipping rapport repeatedly and completely and just jumping straight into questions. The third one is forcing a connection where none exists and skipping it or faking it. It means that you're fighting an uphill battle the whole conversation. So what I'm going to give you is a simple framework for building rapport in the first 3 to 5 minutes of a sales call. And the acronym is FAWN, and it stands for family, which is an area that we connect on if we have children and the person we're talking to has children. We can talk very genuinely and very sincerely about our shared experience around children or just about family in general. The second one is occupation. So if we share a similar background with the person that we're talking to, we will have that in common, and we can talk very sincerely, very genuinely about our shared background in terms of work. The third one is recreation. This one's a really big one. So if you and the person you're talking to share an interest in fishing or golf or surfing like me, that is an area that you can connect on very sincerely and very genuinely. And then the last one is is like nationality, which could be the actual country that you're from, or it could be the state that you grew up in or the football team that you go for. So when I share, it's a good acronym and it works because these are really the 4 core areas that we connect with other human beings on. But the next question I always get is, well, if I don't know someone, am I really going to start asking them about their kids or asking them 20 questions about their background or any of that? And the answer is no. And so, but there is a way through that, and it is simply to do this. So you would ask him, you'd say, so tell me, how did you get into this business anyway? And what happens when you ask that question is that the person will share their background, and they will share a certain version of their background, which will include things that they like talking about and things that they are proud of. And so when they do that, you can start to identify, what are those four things? What can I hear that I might have in common with them around family? What is it that I can hear that I might have in common with them around occupation and recreation and nationality? So the first part is to simply say, so how'd you get into this business anyway? And the person will share, and then you can find the thing, flag the thing that you have in common, and then you can connect on that level. So that's pretty straightforward. So part one, ask the question. Part two, find the thing that you have in common. And then from there, once you've got the connection, you can start to move on. So from there, what you want to do is you want to transition. So you can say, once you've established that connection point, you can now put a frame around what you're going to do. So you can say, okay, so look, in order for us to work out how I might be able to help and understand your situation as well as I can, I have got a few questions to go through with you. Would that be okay? Right? Now you've got permission to ask questions. You've put a frame around what's going to happen, and it's a non-confronting frame, and it's a really good, solid foundation upon which you can now ask some questions, and hopefully you have created an environment where the person's going to be happy to share. So then we then want to, as an example, so I asked that question. The first question that comes from that point is, cool. So, tell me, what is it that's going on that made you decide to want to catch up today? Right. So that's what we call the core driver question. And the beauty of that question is it'll give you what is top of mind for that particular person. What is it that made you decide to want to catch up? So in order to answer that question, I need to admit to myself as a potential buyer, I need to admit to myself that I made a decision to do something about this. So it linguistically, it's quite an interesting question, but it's a very effective one. So, but then once we've done that, we can move into what we call the four horsemen. Now, the four horsemen are questions that relate to four different aspects of the problem that by now your prospect will have shared with you. So when you ask that question, what made you decide, what was it that made you decide to book a time to chat about this? Or what was it that made you decide to get some help with your sales in my situation? The person will share. So they'll say, oh, look, I've got a sales team, and we're spending a heap on marketing. We're getting a lot of leads, but we seem to be writing a lot of proposals, but we don't seem to be converting many of them. So that would be a pretty typical type response that I would get to a question like that. And now I can use the four horsemen. So I learned this from Eli Wild and Eli Sanchez. And what this does is that it actually shines a spotlight on the problem. And so what we want to do is we want to ask so there's effectively four. There's, what was the cause? How long has this been going on? So the duration, the impact, how's this impacting other parts of the business? How's it impacting you? And then the fourth one is the trigger. So what was it? Was there a particular moment that you decided that you needed to get something done about this? So we'll go through each one. First one, root cause. What do you think is causing that? So it has the effect of the person sort of going back and saying, oh, okay, well, I think it was caused by X. So again, we're shining a light on the problem. Then we can move on to duration. So how long has this been going on for? Now the person has to admit to themselves that this has been an unsolved problem that's been annoying them for quite some time, which again, shining the light on the problem and has the effect of bringing whatever it is that they want to do to the forefront. The third question is, what's this costing you, or how is this impacting things? And there can be financial impacts, i.e. we are getting, for each of my sales guys gets 10 leads and they're only converting 2 out of every 10. And we know that they should be converting 5, right? So let's say it's a $10,000 average sale. So that's 30,000 per salesperson per week that they are not converting. And if you've got 4 people, that's 120 grand. That's a over $1 million problem, right? But there can also be qualitative impacts. So it could be stress. It could be the salespeople feel like they're failing and I've got really high staff turnover. There could be all sorts of things. So that's why we don't want to arbitrarily force someone to ask a question. We want to ask questions in many ways, not knowing what sort of a response that we're going to get. But duration is a really good one. And then the last one, of course, is trigger. So what do you think caused this in the first place? Or was there a moment when you realized you needed to do something about this, or has it been something that's been compounding over time? And so now as a buyer, I've got to go back and relive the moment where I realized that I needed to get something done about this, which if I go back and connect it with a particular story, there's an emotion attached to that. So what you get when you go through this is you get a motivated buyer. You get somebody who is effectively, what you're doing is you're helping somebody to get very clear on whether they want to do something about this or not. Is this a problem that they are motivated to solve? Because it's a very different thing to know that you've got a problem versus knowing you've got a problem and being motivated to do something about it. So this is a qualification process, but it's also a disqualification process. We want to go through this process to work out this person's someone who is interested in doing something, because if they're not, we're wasting our time, and we can cut bait, and in a very caring, loving and supportive way, we can point them in a direction where they can get the help that's more appropriate for their particular set of circumstances, as opposed to what it is that we might be able to do. So now that you've established the problem, in this situation, it's low conversion. The root cause is perhaps they've never been trained, or they are people that, don't necessarily have a sales background. They've got more of a technical background. I often get that. We've got the cost, which is 120 grand a month. Now we can actually, now that we've diagnosed properly, we can properly make a recommendation. And we've got somebody who, for the most part, is well qualified. And now we can transition to making some sort of a recommendation or booking a time where we can go through a particular proposal with them. So if you want systematic training on discovery frameworks, which is a version of what we went through that are customized for you, and a sales process for your team, the sales team diagnostic is the best place to start. And it's designed exactly for this. So it's designed for businesses that want to stop winging it and start converting consistently. So when you get rapport right, resistance drops, prospects open up, they give you real information, not guarded surface answers. Trust builds, they see you as someone who understands their world, not just a salesperson who's trying to close them. Conversion will increase because 40% of the buying decision is already made based on whether they feel connected to you or not. And here's what changes when you use this approach. Instead of tell me about your sales process, you start with, so how did you get into this business? Instead of forcing small talk, use fawn. Find the natural, conversational, genuine, and sincere points of connection. Instead of accepting surface problems, use the 4 horsemen to drill down. And the result is that you've built rapport, you've set context, you've diagnosed the real problem, you've established urgency, and you've qualified that this person is actually ready to talk about a particular solution that you might be able to help them with. And you haven't even pitched anything yet. You haven't talked at all about your product or your service, which I can tell you is quite rare. Most salespeople, they've already started pitching within, at least the calls I listen to. A lot of the sales calls I listen to, they've already started pitching within bloody 3 or 4 minutes. And really, you want to make sure that you're at least 15 minutes in before you start even referencing anything about your particular product or service. So next sales call, try this. Start with, how did you get into this business anyway? Look for fawn connectors, set the frame. see if you can find the core driver. So what was it that made you decide to want to get in touch? Use the 4 horsemen, and you'll know within 15 minutes whether this is a real opportunity or whether you should point them in the right direction in a caring, loving, and understanding and supportive way, where they can get the help that is more appropriate for this particular situation. And if it is, you've already won 40% of the sale just by being genuine. So rapport isn't manipulation. It really is just understanding their world and showing that you get them, and so that they feel heard before you try to solve their problem. And if you get this right, everything else will become a lot easier. As always, thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you on the next podcast.
You've been listening to Master Dealmaker Secrets with John Blake. Subscribe to get more in-depth strategies and maximize your sales process with new episodes every other week. And double your inquiry to sale conversion with the lead flow you already have. Go to johnblakeaudio.com for his exclusive, free, no-fluff audio training and companion PDF guide.